the building she owned. My name is Renata Voss. I am 37 years old, and I built a commercial real estate development firm from the ground up in the heart of Atlanta, Georgia. I did it without a single dollar from my family. I did it working nights, skipping vacations, and eating rice and beans for 2 years while I studied for my licensing exams. And I did it while my family spent every holiday telling me I was wasting my life chasing a man's dream. Before I continue, drop your location in the comments. I want to know where my people are watching from. And if you have ever had to prove yourself to someone who never believed in you, hit that like button right now. Because what happened in my conference room on a cold February morning changed everything. It started the way most catastrophes do, quietly and without warning. I was sitting across from two of the most influential commercial investors in the Southeast. Marcus Delaney and his business partner, Sophie Raines, were finalizing a $22 million mixed-use development contract that would anchor my firm, Voss Capital Properties, as a premier force in urban revitalization. My team had spent 4 months preparing every square inch of those documents. The air in the room smelled like fresh coffee and possibility. I was leaning forward to hand Marcus the signature page when the frosted glass doors of my conference room swung open so hard they bounced against the wall. My younger brother Dominic walked in first. He was 33 years old, and had spent the last decade cycling through sales jobs he quit before the 90-day probationary period ended. Behind him came my father, Gerald, in a blazer he had clearly borrowed from someone thinner, and behind him, moving with the slow theatrical authority of a woman who believes her entrance requires an audience, was my mother, Harriet. I had not spoken to any of them in 14 months. Marcus half rose from his chair. Sophie set her pen down slowly, watching. I did not move. I had spent years training myself never to flinch. "Dad," I said, using his title deliberately this time, because I wanted him to understand that what he was about to do, he was doing as a parent in front of witnesses. "This is a closed client meeting. You need to leave." Gerald did not even glance at Marcus or Sophie. He walked directly to my side of the table and dropped a manila folder on top of the development contract like he was throwing down a verdict. "We are settling this today," he said. "Open it." I did not open it. Dominic dropped into one of my client chairs uninvited and crossed his ankle over his knee like he owned the room. He looked around at the exposed brick walls and the floor-to-ceiling windows with the slow, appraising gaze of a man already mentally redecorating. My mother stood near the doorway with her arms folded, wearing the expression she reserved for moments she believed were beneath her, which was most moments. "That is a transfer agreement," Gerald announced, loud enough for both investors to hear clearly. "You are signing 55% of this firm over to your brother and naming him co-director. He has the vision and the personality to take this company where it needs to go. You have done the hard part, Renata. Now step aside and let the family benefit." The room was completely silent except for the ambient sound of the city 20 floors below us. "The hard part," I repeated. "You heard your father," Harriet said from the doorway. "Do not make this a performance." I looked at Dominic. He was picking a piece of lint from his borrowed blazer, still not making eye contact with me. I closed the folder without opening it. "You just walked into a confidential meeting with 2 investors who are about to sign a major contract," I said, keeping my voice exactly as level as a surveyor's line. "You interrupted that meeting to hand me a document demanding I surrender majority ownership of a company I built entirely alone to a man who has not held a job for longer than 3 months in a decade. And your reasoning is vision and personality." Gerald's jaw tightened. "Do not embarrass this family." "That opportunity passed about 10 minutes ago when you walked through my door," I replied. Marcus cleared his throat. He had 2 daughters in college. I had done my homework on him. He leaned back in his chair and watched Gerald with an expression that could strip paint. Gerald apparently decided that embarrassment required escalation. "You think this office protects you?" he said, dropping his voice to the register menus when they want to sound dangerous. "I know the leasing company that manages this building. We played golf with the property director last spring. 1 phone call from me, and your lease is reviewed. You will be packing boxes by the end of the month." Harriet smiled from the doorway. Dominic finally looked up. I reached across my desk and turned the conference room speakerphone to face my father. "Call him," I said. Gerald blinked. "Call the property director right now." "I will wait." He hesitated for exactly 4 seconds. Then his ego made the decision for him. He pulled out his phone, dialed, and held it up with a smile that did not reach his eyes. The line rang. Once, twice. Someone picked up. "Pinnacle Property Management. This is Trevor." "Trevor, this is Gerald Voss. I need to speak with your director about a lease review for a tenant in the Commerce Tower on Peachtree." A brief pause. "Mr. Voss, which suite are you inquiring about?" "Suite 2000. A firm called Voss Capital Properties." Another pause. Longer this time. "Sir, I want to make sure I understand your request. You are asking us to review the lease for the sole owner of this building?" My father's confident posture shifted by about 3 degrees. What did you say? Voss Capital Properties does not lease Suite 2000, Mr. Voss. Miss Renata Voss purchased this building outright 18 months ago through a private acquisition. She is our employer. We work for her. Is there anything else I can help you with today? The speakerphone clicked off. The silence that followed was so complete that I could hear Marcus slowly exhale through his nose. Dominic's ankle came down from his knee. Gerald stared at his phone like it had spoken to him in a language he did not recognize. I stood up, smoothed the front of my blazer, and walked to the conference room door. I opened it and held it without a word. 2 members of my security team were already positioned in the hallway. I had texted them 3 minutes after my family walked in. My mother's composure cracked first. She stepped forward with both hands raised. Renata, you cannot do this. These are your people. We are your blood. You are trespassing. I said simply. Please leave before I file a report. She left. Dominic left without a word, moving quickly, like someone trying to outrun a sound. Gerald was last. He stopped in the doorway and turned to look at me one final time. His voice was quiet now, stripped of its performance. You will regret this. I own the building you just tried to have me evicted from, I said. I think we both know who made the larger error today. The door closed. I walked back to the conference table, sat down, and looked at Marcus and Sophie. I sincerely apologize for that interruption, I said. Shall we continue? Marcus picked up his pen and clicked it open. Renata, he said. Any firm that handles a hostile family ambush with that level of composure can certainly handle our $22 million portfolio. Where do I sign? I should have known they would regroup. Arrogant people do not accept defeat. They simply change tactics. Within 48 hours, a coordinated attack began across every professional platform I used. Anonymous reviews appeared on legal and business directories, claiming my firm operated deceptively and exploited subcontractors. A detailed blog post circulated through Atlanta real estate circles, alleging that I had falsified appraisal reports to overvalue properties and deceive investors. The writing style was too polished to be amateur. I recognized the cadence immediately. My younger sister-in-law, Petra, was a marketing strategist at a boutique agency. She had built her reputation on precision messaging. Dominic had clearly gone home and handed her a version of events so distorted it was nearly fictional. And Petra, loyal and furious on his behalf, had turned it into a narrative weapon. The posts were tagged to my firm's official profiles. They were designed to appear in the feeds of every developer and investor I had cultivated over 7 years. My phone began ringing before 8 in the morning. A commercial developer in Buckhead asked cautious questions. A city council contact who referred clients sent a diplomatically worded message asking if everything was all right. A lender I had worked with for 4 years requested a call to discuss some concerns. I answered every single one with the same calm certainty. Our financial records and completed project history are publicly available. I welcome any review. I did not release a defensive press statement. I did not post an emotional rebuttal. Petra was skilled enough to use any public reaction as additional fuel, and I refused to give her kindling. But while I was managing the reputational damage with steady hands, my father was working a different angle entirely. Gerald had spent 30 years building a social life inside the corridors of Atlanta's old money networking circles. He knew which restaurants the city's senior developers ate lunch in, which golf courses they played on Thursday mornings, and which charity boards they served on. He used every connection methodically. He told people I was under investigation by the state licensing board. He told a contractor I had worked with for 5 years that I had been flagged for fraudulent appraisal submissions. He positioned himself as a reluctant whistleblower, a heartbroken father forced to expose his daughter's corruption to protect the integrity of the industry. 2 client accounts sent termination notices within the same week. No calls, no meetings. Just cold legal emails demanding file transfers. I looked at the revenue impact on my forecast screen and felt the numbers settle into my chest like a stone. 14% of my quarterly operating income. Gone. My finance director stood in my doorway, with printed reports and nervous hands. I told him to sit down, close the door, and listen. They are going to make mistakes, I said. Greedy people always do. Our job right now is to stay solvent and stay patient. He did not look entirely convinced, but he nodded. What neither he nor my family knew was that Gerald had made one catastrophic miscalculation. In his campaign to position Dominic as the rightful leader of a real estate firm, he had begun courting clients with complex development needs that neither he nor Dominic was remotely qualified to service. He was making promises backed by nothing but borrowed confidence. I knew this because one of those clients called me directly. A mid-size logistics company had been approached by Gerald with promises of expedited permitting and off-market land acquisition in a competitive corridor. The company's operations director called my personal line, confused, Because the man claiming to represent a premier development group could not answer basic questions about zoning compliance. I thanked her for the call. I told her I would be in touch. Then I opened a file I had been saving for exactly the right moment. 3 weeks earlier, a referral had come through an indirect channel. A developer named Curtis Wayne was seeking aggressive legal and structural support for a complex land acquisition involving overseas capital. He was offering a significant consulting retainer. The preliminary numbers were extraordinary, but I had done what I always do. I ran a full background investigation before taking any meeting. Curtis Wayne was not a developer. He was a sophisticated con artist currently under active federal investigation for wire fraud and illegal capital movement across state lines. The FBI Financial Crimes Unit had been building a case against him for 11 months. Any firm that agreed to facilitate his acquisition structure would be walking directly into a federal conspiracy charge. I declined the referral immediately and secured the file in an encrypted archive. Now I looked at that file with different eyes. Gerald was hungry, desperate, and had surrounded himself with people incapable of doing basic due diligence. He needed a marquee client to prove that his son's firm was legitimate. He needed a trophy. I was going to give him one. I printed the Wayne file on fresh paper, highlighted the retainer figures, and left it partially visible on my desk during a period when I knew my office assistant, a young man named Perry, would be alone in the room to retrieve some documents. Perry had been quietly reporting my calendar activity to Gerald for 6 weeks. I had known for 4 of those weeks and said nothing. A known leak is simply a controlled channel. I made sure Perry heard me mention, just casually, that I was trying to figure out how to protect the Wayne engagement given my current operating pressures. Perry was on his phone before he reached the elevator. I walked to the security monitor room and watched the feed from my desk camera. Perry had photographed the file and transmitted it within 8 minutes. Clean, fast, exactly as expected. I gave Gerald 3 days. He called Wayne on the 2nd. I was not in the room for that dinner, but I received the full account later through federal discovery documents. Gerald reserved a private room at a steakhouse in Midtown. He ordered aged cuts and expensive bourbon. He told Curtis Wayne that his daughter had been too cautious, too bound by conventional thinking to seize an opportunity of this magnitude. He guaranteed that his firm could move the capital without triggering any domestic reporting requirements. Dominic sat across from Wayne and nodded with the determined expression of a man trying to appear like he understood what was being discussed. Wayne asked directly whether the transfer could be structured to avoid federal visibility. Gerald said yes. Dominic signed the consulting agreement. There were 2 federal agents seated at a table 12 feet away. The private dining room had been wired that afternoon. I spent that evening on the back porch of my home, drinking chamomile tea and watching the Atlanta skyline glow orange against the clouds. My accounts were still partially frozen from the anonymous fraud tip Petra had filed with my bank. My license review was pending. 3 clients had gone quiet, but I felt completely still, because I knew that the 2 men who had walked into my building and told me my success was a gift they could revoke were now sitting across from a federal informant, explaining in careful detail how to commit international wire fraud. The trap had closed. They simply had not heard it yet. What happened next I did not plan, but it was perhaps the most important part of the story. After I sent Petra the financial records showing the loans Dominic had secretly taken against her personal accounts to fund his firm's startup costs, she did not call me back immediately. She called her attorney. Then she called me. Her voice on the phone was quiet and precise in the way that only truly furious people manage. She had discovered that Dominic had forged her signature on 2 high-interest business lending agreements, totaling nearly $280,000. She was the sole guarantor. He had done it while she was traveling for a client conference. He had used her home office printer, her notary contact, and her professional letterhead. The man she had built a life with had dismantled her financial security to buy credibility for a business he was entirely unqualified to run. I told her what I knew. I told her about the federal investigation. I told her what was coming. The silence on the line lasted a long time. "What do you need from me?" she finally said. "I need you to document everything and protect yourself first," I told her. "After that, I need the truth." Petra spent the following 72 hours pulling records. She found the forged signatures. She found the bank routing confirmations. She found emails between Dominic and Gerald discussing how to use her industry contacts to accelerate their media campaign against me, treating her network as a tool without her knowledge or consent. She had spent weeks fighting a war for a man who was quietly robbing her. She brought everything to my office in a folder she carried like it was evidence, which it was. We sat across from each other at the same conference table where my family had tried to ambush me weeks earlier. The hostility between us had been replaced by something colder and more useful. Clarity. "I published those articles about you," she said. Her voice did not waver. "I want to formally retract every single one with a full correction statement." "I know," I said, "and I want you to. But do it on your terms, in your own words, when you are ready. Your credibility is worth protecting." She looked at me for a long moment. Why are you helping me? Because they used both of us, I said. And because you are not the enemy. The arrests happened on a Thursday morning. Federal agents arrived at the offices of Voss Development Partners. The name Gerald had filed for his competing firm. At 9:14 a. They did not make an announcement. They simply walked in with warrants and began the process with the quiet efficiency of people who have done this many times. Gerald was placed in handcuffs in the reception area, in front of 2 paralegal staff he had hired the previous month. Dominic was apprehended in the parking structure. He had apparently seen the federal vehicles from the elevator and attempted to leave on foot. He made it to the second level. The charges included conspiracy to commit wire fraud, unlawful facilitation of illegal capital transfers, and filing of fraudulent court documents. The last charge related to a forged subpoena they had attempted to use to access my firm's financial disclosures. Petra's attorney filed for divorce that same afternoon. She issued a formal public correction of every article and review she had published about my firm, with a detailed statement of how the campaign had been orchestrated without her informed consent and based on false information she had been given by her husband. The statement was measured, professional, and completely devastating to any remaining credibility the Voss Development name carried. I watched the correction spread through the same professional networks the original smear had traveled. By Friday morning, 3 of the clients who had gone quiet called to re-engage. 6 months later, I was standing on the rooftop terrace of the Commerce Tower on a clear Atlanta evening. Petra stood beside me. She had joined Voss Capital Properties as Director of Communications after the divorce was finalized. She brought her full professional network and a reputation for integrity that had survived the storm because she had faced it directly instead of running from it. She handed me a glass of wine and looked out over the city. Dominic, she said, catching herself and laughing quietly. He called the office last week. He wanted a reference letter. What did you say? I had his number permanently blocked across our entire system, she said. And then I went to lunch. I raised my glass. She raised hers. Below us, the city moved with its usual relentless momentum. But up here, the air was clear, and the view was entirely ours. To the people who told us to step aside, I said. Petra smiled. It was the smile of a woman who had walked through a fire and come out the other side with better shoes. And to the lesson they paid for with everything, she replied. The glasses touched with a clean, bright sound that rang out over the rooftop and dissolved into the warm Atlanta night. The lesson I carry from this is not about revenge. Revenge is a distraction. And I do not have time for distractions. The lesson is this. When you build something real, with your own hands, on your own terms, no one can take it from you by simply demanding that you hand it over. They have to be able to match what you built, and people who spend their lives underestimating others never develop that capacity. Protect your work. Document everything. Know who is in your circle. And never mistake loyalty for obligation. They are not the same thing. You owe your success to the sleepless nights and the sacrifices that built it. Not to the people who showed up after the lights were already on, expecting a seat at a table they had no hand in setting. Drop your thoughts in the comments. Share this if it spoke to something real in your life. And I will see you in the next one.